I'm Katie Couric. In a contentious face-off on Capitol Hill, the top U.S. commander in Iraq says this is no time to pull out American troops. Does the future chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee agree? We'll talk to Senator Carl Levin. U.S. Airways makes a hostile bid to take over bankrupt Delta Airlines. Will that mean fewer seats and higher fares? And a biological clock ticking for men? What Father Time does to older dads.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hi, everyone. They won control of Congress with calls to start pulling U.S. troops out of Iraq. But 1 week later, the Democrats have run into their first big roadblock, a roadblock with a green uniform and 4 stars. General John Abizaid, the top U.S. commander in Iraq, told Congress he opposes a timetable for withdrawing American troops. And he said the U.S. and Iraqi governments have at most 6 months to reduce the violence in Baghdad before it spins out of control. Here's our national security correspondent, David Martin.
Although he is sending another 2,000 Marines into Iraq to try to keep the lid on violence in the country's Wild West, General John Abizaid told the Senate Armed Services Committee he is against either a substantial buildup or a cutback in U.S. troops. Then he made this stunning admission. The U.S. military does not have enough troops for a big buildup, even if he wanted one.
We can put in 20,000 more Americans tomorrow and achieve a temporary effect. But when you look at the overall American force pool that's available out there, the ability to sustain that commitment is simply not something that we have right now with the size of the Army and the Marine Corps.
Which raises this question. Is the current strategy the best strategy or simply the best the U.S. can do under the circumstances? According to Abizaid, past strategy had significant flaws. Specifically, not enough troops in the months after the fall of Baghdad.
I think you can look back and say that more American troops would have been advisable in the early stages of June, July.
That's May, June, and July of 2003. As for the current strategy, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency said one very important trend is moving in the wrong direction.
Violence in Iraq continues to increase in scope, complexity, and lethality.
Although Abizaid said he plans to increase the number of American trainers assigned to Iraqi units, senators looking for a major change in strategy were disappointed.
That basically you're advocating the status quo here today, which I think the American people in the last election said that is not an acceptable condition.
That from a potential Republican candidate for president who advocates sending more troops. This from a potential Democratic candidate who wants a drawdown.
Hope is not a strategy. Hortatory talk about what the Iraqi government must do is getting old. Brutal fact is, it is not happening.
Abizaid had a response worthy of a presidential debate.
And I would also say that despair is not a method. And when I come to Washington, I feel despair.
Debating aside, Abizaid says he's optimistic Iraq can still be saved, but acknowledges violence remains unacceptably high. Katie?
David Martin at the Pentagon tonight. Senator Carl Levin of Michigan is the ranking Democrat on the Armed Services Committee, soon to be its chairman. Senator, were you as frustrated with General Abizaid's position today as John McCain and Hillary Clinton?
I was somewhat frustrated because I thought basically he was saying that we should stay the course, which is, I think, clearly a position that's been rejected by the American people overwhelmingly. Staying the course in Iraq is not a strategy for success. The horrible violence on the ground, it seems to me, is proving that every day.
So as the future chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, where does that leave you, Senator Levin? I mean, what are your options? You have long advocated a phased withdrawal, but how are you going to make that happen? It seems almost impossible right now.
What I'm hoping to do is, now that the election's over, is to see if there aren't some Republicans, and I believe there are, who also believe we've got to change the course in Iraq, and that only the Iraqis can change that course, because only they can work out the political settlement, which is so essential to ending the violence.
Senator Levin, I don't mean to see the glass as half empty, but what if the Iraqis and the Iraqi government, what if they're not up to the job?
We cannot save them from themselves, Katie. We've done everything that any country could to give them an opportunity. The only people who can reach a positive outcome here are the Iraqis and their political leadership. If they're going to have a civil war, that's got to be their choice.
Senator Carl Levin. Senator, thank you.
Katie, great being with you.
Meanwhile, in Baghdad tonight, officials are still trying to sort out the details of that mass kidnapping at an education office. It's still not clear exactly how many people were kidnapped yesterday. Estimates range from 40 to 150, or how many people are still being held. The Iraqi government says more than 70 hostages were freed after troops raided the kidnappers' hideouts. A different kind of hostility, this one closer to home. U.S. Airways said today it wants to buy Delta Airlines for $8 billion, but Delta says, in effect, buzz off, not interested. It's just the beginning of the battle, a battle that could end with higher fares for air travelers. Here's Bob Orr.
If U.S. Airways' hostile bid for Delta flies, the new joint airline will be a monster, the largest in America, carrying 150 million U.S. passengers a year. About 1 in every 5.
I really believe that the consumers will end up well served from this merger.
The merger would be a corporate triumph of David over a wounded Goliath. Last year, struggling America West Airlines swallowed the financially strapped U.S. Airways and took its name. Now that new U.S. Airways is trying to swallow bankrupt giant Delta and grab its name. Creditors left high and dry in Delta's bankruptcy have been offered $8 billion in cash and stock. It's a potentially lucrative deal. The critics say it stinks for travelers who will find fewer cheap seats, fewer flights, and more crowded planes.
They're going to see higher fares. They're going to see less competition. They're going to see fewer options. And going forward, some markets are going to be dominated now by one carrier or only have one carrier. So for the consumer, despite the hype, this is a really bad deal.
Delta doesn't really like it either. It rebuffed a friendly merger proposal last year, and in a statement today said it still plans to emerge from bankruptcy in the first half of 2007 as a strong standalone carrier. The hostile takeover faces big hurdles. The government has antitrust questions. And U.S. Airways, already burned by its own bankruptcy, still has to sell the idea to its stockholders. But if the deal goes through, aviation analyst Darrell Jenkins says look for others.
This could be the first of a series of a lot of mergers in the airline industry, between big airlines and between small airlines as well.
And that could really hit passengers hard. As an enemy of competition, consolidation could bring an end to the era of the bargain airfare. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
In other news tonight, the South was hit hard today by a huge wave of rain, wind, and hail, and maybe even tornadoes. In Montgomery, Alabama, one storm ripped apart a skating rink that doubles as a daycare center. 31 preschoolers and 4 adults took cover in the only part of the building that wasn't destroyed. 2 children suffered minor injuries, but everyone else is okay. A former Washington insider has a new roof over his head. Lobbyist Jack Abramoff reported today to the federal pen in Cumberland, Maryland. He'll serve 6 years for business fraud. Abramoff is still cooperating with a corruption investigation allegedly involving members of Congress and White House officials. Meanwhile, another ex-power broker is making a big comeback. Republican senators today elected Trent Lott of Mississippi as minority whip, second in command to the new minority leader, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Lott was forced to give up the Republican majority leader post 4 years ago after making remarks considered racially insensitive. All week long, we're looking at some of the big issues the new 110th Congress will be facing. Immigration reform is a sensitive one, right at the top of the list. Congress will once again debate whether to start a guest worker program, which would allow more immigrants to work here temporarily. President Bush and House Speaker in waiting Nancy Pelosi both say it's urgently needed. But as Bill Whitaker reports, finding the votes won't be easy.
In the fertile valleys of Santa Barbara County, when it comes to immigration, President of the local Growers Association, Richard Quant, voices a common complaint.
We didn't have enough workers this year.
In Los Angeles, restaurant owner Blair Salisbury has the same lament.
People ask me a question, why don't you hire more non-Hispanics? Trust me, they're not there. They're not.
2 different businesses, one common problem. Now, these 2 Republicans share something else in common. Both are pinning their hopes on the new democratically controlled Congress to help them get the immigrant labor they say they need. Do you expect things to change now?
I really do. We're going to have to go with some type of guest worker program.
That's exactly what President Bush has been pushing.
It's a guest worker program where people can come on a temporary basis to do jobs Americans are not doing.
But even with some 12 million immigrants in the U.S. illegally, all the outgoing Republican-controlled Congress could agree on was a 700-mile fence along the Mexican border. And here in California, where immigrants are slicing the celery Americans will be dicing for Thanksgiving stuffing, many employers want a more sweeping solution.
We can do better as a country, but the Congress needs to move forward with comprehensive immigration reform.
It would be a mistake to assume that just because Congress is changing, that there will be significant change in immigration policy. The Democrats might find it just as thorny a problem to solve as the Republicans did.
Jean Butterfield is an expert on immigration law.
Well, we still have deep divisions in both the Democratic and Republican Party. We have Democrats who will not vote for anything that has a new temporary worker program in it. We have Republicans who will not vote for anything that has a broad-ranging legalization program in it.
But now, with the president and presumed House leader Nancy Pelosi both wanting a guest worker program, and both parties eager to win alienated Latino voters, the time might just be right for immigration reform. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Santa Maria, California.
And we'll continue our reports on the agenda facing the 110th Congress tomorrow and Friday when we take a closer look at the debate over the minimum wage and prescription drug prices. There is much more CBS News straight ahead. And still to come, we all knew women had one. Now it turns out men have one too, the biological clock. What makes it tick? Next.